Hi, everyone. I'm Steve. I'm here with Dr. Nario. Thanks for being here, Doc.
Hi, Steve. Thank you for having me again. Always a pleasure.
All right, so we're going to talk about Tesmorelin, one of my favorites. It is a growth hormone stimulator. It causes the pituitary to stimulate, or it stimulates the pituitary to release more growth hormone, which is a really cool thing. So that's what we're going to talk about. If you guys have interest in interviews with doctors, nutritionists, personal trainers, subscribe to the channel. If you want to know more about our weight loss program, hit the QR, or there's a QR code right there on the screen, or there's a link in the description. So Dr. Nario is with Biointegrative Health Center. They treat a lot of things. They do a lot of IV drips and stuff like that. You can check them out online and see what they do. Okay, so Tesmorelin. Give us the first, basic rundown on what this is. I kind of described it a little bit, but just give us the doctor's perspective.
Well, Steve, the hot topic is always growth hormone, right? Everybody just wants a piece of growth hormone, but you can't get it because it's so regulated. You get in trouble even as a doctor. It's hard for you to prescribe this just because of the strictness of the regulation of the FDA that you really have to be what we call growth hormone deficient to actually get the benefits of growth hormone. Thus, this was created. So these are what we call now the replicas or the wannabes, but they're still definitely helpful. These are the growth hormone receptor hormone stimulators, or even the ghrelin receptors, which actually indirect stimulates production of growth hormone in our system, and it works well. I've used it on patients myself, and I definitely vouch for it that it does. It's a game changer. I'm telling you.
Well, yeah, I mean, growth hormone is, and we should say that this is a more natural process because Tesmorelin is a peptide, which is a short chain of amino acids. That's all it is. Your body could make it
Mhm.
from eating protein, but it's much easier if it's already formulated in that peptide, that short chain of amino acids. So that's all it is. It's more of a natural type thing. The synthetic growth hormone, that stuff kind of scares me. I don't think I would take that.
Yeah, the issue with the actual growth hormone, Steve, is number one, very expensive. Like we're talking about like every month, 100 plus bucks for that. That's one of the bigger ones. Number two, you have to, as a provider, you have to document this really that you did tests, like stimulation tests as we call them, to really show that your patient is growth hormone deficient in order for them to justify. So there's a lot of work for us clinicians and a lot of scrutiny because when we give that prescription out, we need to jump through hoops and requirements for a patient to use it. I mean, for a patient, really, it's okay, but it's really more of the clinician. And also, of course, the worry about that is so strong of a stimulant that if somebody has hidden cancers, hidden cancer can just grow, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, I don't want my head to turn into a sideways watermelon.
maybe back ways, not sideways, with testosterone.
Okay, so we're talking about the peptides here. Now, I've taken, as you know, because you helped me do this, CJC 1295 with impamorelin. That's a combination, and that's a very popular two peptides. But let's talk about the difference. And the difference is in the half-life. So you were telling me before we turn this on, the half-life, give me the half-life of the Impamorelin and the CJC 1295.
Yeah, so the good comparison that you can head to head comparison is more with ipamorelin, because as you could hear the name, right? Ipamorelin and tesamorelin, so they basically fall into that same category. So ipamorelin falls into the minutes category, like around 30 minutes. I think really the better one is sarmorelin, which is 10 to 20 minutes of a half life. And for the tesamorelin, the one that we're actually talking about now, this is actually 2 hours. So that's why you would notice that why this is preferred because it does a longer action on your growth hormone production. So that's why when you talk about about this, and then also when you talk about ipamorelin, it usually is added with CJC. You don't need CJC anymore when you're going to use tesamorelin by itself. So ipamorelin, yeah, that's why it's definitely a stronger component on its own. So ipamorelin can go as 2 hours as well, but again, it's better used with CJC, and now also the pricing gets a little bit higher when you add these two together. That's the claim to fame of tesamorelin.
What's the half life of CG 1295?
CGC is mostly like an hour, so that's why they kind of synergistically come together. So that's why it's just a lock and key fit for both CJC and ipamorelin when they use it with each other. But
Okay.
there's also, you can enhance CJC's half life with DAC, as we call it. So this now makes the half life into like days, meaning rather than just hours, like even like 5 days. So that's why you could do a little bit more of these changes, because when you don't have DAC, the half-life of CJC, as I mentioned to you, 30 minutes to an hour.
So tell everybody what DAC is.
It's a drug affinity complex. So this is something that you kind of now manipulate the molecule CJC, attach it to the side, it's a side chain to extend its half-life, basically, to last for almost a week.
This is part of the peptide, and it's also prescribed.
It is. It's actually a modified, hybridized version of CJC. So you know them, they come up with all these weird combinations just to enhance a specific peptide in terms of action.
Sure. There's a lot of amino acid chains out there for sure. So you take this, and we'll get to the tesamorelin, which is you're saying is more powerful. So we'll find out why. But you take these before bed on an empty stomach, correct?
That's right. So that's actually correct. But to be more specific, Steve, it's actually 90 minutes before bedtime or after the last meal that you've taken in. And also, again, why is this being emphasized? The reason for that is the highest production of growth hormone is usually at nighttime before going to bed. So that's the reason why, as I said, before bedtime. And one of the better ways to do this is because when food is in your system, growth hormone release is less. So when you say these tesamorelins, CJCs, ipamorelin, all of this are used to enhance the natural production of your body. So you want to take that window and you utilize all those resources when you give this medicine to yourself or peptide.
Okay, so tell us about Tesmorelin. You've used it. You like it. I know we've talked a lot, and you've always used these peptides to help your body produce more growth hormone on its own. So tell us about how your body responded, or just tell us a little more about it.
So on a more personal, maybe I'll tell you the personal note later, but let's talk about what on paper tesamorelin does, right? So at least we can have a comparison. So really, the story of tesamorelin starts when FDA actually have approved this as the product name called Agrifta, I'm sorry. And this is basically used for patients who has HIV. So it's a condition it's a 2010, it got approved by the FDA. It's for the condition of HIV lipodystrophy. So what is that? Let's make that simple for our audience here. That is actually a loss of fat tissue in the certain areas of the body, but you actually accumulate fat in the wrong places, like the abdomen, now bringing these patients into a state of that proneness to diabetes, hypertension, right? So all of these things are metabolic strains. And when you give tesamorelin, this actually trims down that fat. That's something that we like about growth hormone. It shows muscle and also makes us lose weight, right? And it removes the fat. And again, it makes us also produces growth hormone for these growth hormone deficient HIV patients, because we know when you have these types of pathologies, you definitely have a lower growth hormone level. So basically, yeah, as you can see, it was made really for HIV patients. And of course, other studies have shown that it lowered a fatty liver. It also improves elevated liver enzymes. And another beauty of this, would be for the improvement of the cognitive function of the brain. It actually had shown repair for patients who had like peripheral injury damage, who got into accidents, or even the ones who have mild cognitive impairment. And that's why also why it's banned by the World Anti-Doping Agency in relation to sports, unfortunately.
That means it must be good,
It
right?
must be good when they don't want it because it can enhance people in a bad way in terms of athleticism.
Right. Unfair. Unfair
Unfair, no
advantage.
fair.
So you don't have a lot of fat to lose,
Well, yeah, that's true.
but you notice what are the positives?
So in my end, it's really more of exercise. So that's why I understand why WADA, that's what they call it, the World Anti-Doping Agency doesn't want to use this because you'll see your workouts really, your endurance is higher, your stamina is better. You just last longer in terms of exercising, maybe cardio or weightlifting. That's why that's number one. Number two, sleep. So any growth hormone stimulator that you use, may it be real growth hormone, it is also focused on stimulating your pineal gland to produce a lot of melatonin to induce better sleep, and thus regeneration is better and faster. And when I compare this to CJC and Ipamorelin, again, as I mentioned to you, I use less of a dose compared to the CJC Ipamorelin, and of course the longer acting effects of that compared to the combo of CJC Ipamorelin. So again, this might be different for everybody, but this is for my own experience as I shared to you guys.
And did you notice more endurance?
Yeah, so I don't really do much cardio or hit, but when I do this, there are classes they're like I mean not classes, but I do videos of hit workouts. I can do more of those on Tesmorelin versus CJC Pamorelin.
Hmm. I mean, they both work, right?
They do. They really do. And that's the thing. For my curiosity, I just needed to see the comparison because anything I do, I always want my patients to kind of hear it from me that, hey, I've done it before I recommend it to you guys. That's why it's safe. And this is the reason why I'm giving to you because of personal experience. Guinea pigging
Sure.
myself.
You got to put your money where your mouth
Yeah.
is, right?
There you go. Plus the side effects. If you feel the side effects, man, I felt it too. See, at least you have that story to tell.
Yeah. So what side effects are possible?
So side effects really are, as I mentioned to you, it's a very safe peptide. And the common ones that you would see is the common ones that you would hear when you get an injection. So it's redness on the site. Sure, if you have allergic reactions to components of it, will you get a rash? Sure, that's also part of that. Another one would be if you get too much of it, joint aches and muscle pains because of just the
Hmm.
overstimulation of the joints and also the muscles. And sometimes it can even give you GI issues such as diarrhea. Very rare though. All of these side effects that I mentioned to you are very rare. And here's the effect that you really want to hear. IGF levels increase by almost 180 micrograms per liter after the injection of tesamorelin. And the beauty of this, because some of the other growth hormone stimulators are actually affecting other hormones in your pituitary gland like LH, ACTH, and prolactin. But this one, you don't have to worry about those.
So make a comparison for us. What would the levels normally be, at the time that you would take this if you didn't take it? What's the comparison? You gave us that number,
Mhm.
but how does that compare to someone who doesn't use it?
Yeah, so the thing here is
Who's young and has, still their body's still working and pumping out some growth hormone.
right. So the number that I gave you is these are what we call the studies had shown how to increase that much of IGF. But again, when you look at IGF levels, you have to compare this in an age related, I guess, way. You can't standardize IGF levels. It's different from a 60 to a 30-year-old. But most of my patients who I see are seniors who actually are interested in this because the younger ones, they still have growth hormone, right? So ideally, I like my IGF levels to be at least 100 and above to at least give me some satisfaction that okay, growth hormone is still being utilized by this system, and that's something that where we want it to be. If you're lower than 100, that's when I recommend these growth hormone stimulators. And then again, it's different in terms of response. And you look at this through the IG. Even sometimes even IGF levels does not move. Some of my patients will just be more verbal about, hey, I like it. I felt the energy. But when we look at the IGF levels, it's still like it just moved like 5 points from the baseline. But that's why the more important thing of a response here is the clinical response of the patient and what they tell you.
But you're not testing them at night when it gets that spike,
Oh
also.
no, it's again, you're going to have a problem with your lab because they're closed, number one. So number
Right.
two,
They're closed at 2 in the morning.
yes, I've never done that to a patient who's just doing a growth hormone stimulator, unless
Or to the lab.
or to the lab that will torture them to give them extra work. But no, it's just yeah, it's just your random blood test.
So what's a high level?
A high level goes up to the like 200s, 300s now, and that's kind of like gets me on the edge, just because, as I mentioned to you, there are patients who are not eligible for this. So we're now going into this conversation of, as I mentioned to you, about cancer. Sometimes we're not sure if we have cancer or not, right? That's why we do your colonoscopies, your mammograms, just to find out. So that's number one, especially for those are the ones that you kind of put your radar up just to make sure that you're still safe in doing this. And then also, of course, the ones who are actually doping. So there's a lot of patients that I see also in the athletic world that are doing this. And also for the people who has like pregnant, you can't give this to a pregnant person. They'll make that fetus grow bigger. And people with brain tumors, you can't do that also. So these are just some of the precautionary measures. But again, you can definitely avoid it, avoidable when you do your due diligence.
Because it makes things grow like your muscles.
That's right, and that's why I'm telling you, people are just not on testosterone when you see them in the gym, not just only on steroids. You hear about the SERMs, you hear about peptides, so you really have to put your beyond the game, your A game, in terms of investigating on what these people are taking because they might interact in the wrong way. They're overdoing it. They just don't know. They just listen to their buddy gym friends who recommended this to them or read something through the internet or TikTok.
Yeah, and you don't want to just go buy this stuff.
Right.
You want to go through a doctor and get a prescription and come from a reputable pharmacy. That's really important.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Yeah, you don't just go buy this stuff on the internet. But if you go through your doctor and you get a prescription and it comes from a reputable pharmacy, peptides is just a chain of amino acids. It's natural.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Don't get it from that guy in the alleyway with their car trunk open and selling all these weird peptides. Don't go there.
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't trust that either. So, anything else that you would want to say about this?
Again, very safe. These are things that are done. Do it with your medical provider. As I mentioned to you, these peptides are available online. You have to make sure the quality of these peptides that you're putting in your body are legitimate, number one. And number two, for your safety, as I mentioned to you, that not all peptides are safe, even though you hear it, but somebody who has cancer shouldn't be using this. And you need to get evaluated for that if, let's say, you're not in the healthiest form that you could be. So that's why work with your doctor and the one who's educated about it. And I'm sure you're going to maximize this peptide, whatever shape or form you're using it on.
All right, Dr. Nario, thank you so much for being with us and your input on these peptides.
Yes, Stu. Well, thank you again for having me. We all know that our knowledge is your power to better health. And thank you for letting me provide you with the edge on longevity and health maintenance, which I call the biological edge or the bio edge.